All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to back to town hall. Took a little break. I was on vacation. Joanne, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah. So our participants are working really, really hard to finish up their projects. I don't know if you had any words of encouragement or advice for them right now.
Yes, so so over the last, I just wanted to also point out something. So over the last couple of weeks, we've also made some changes to the program regarding the feedback that we got from the original survey. And, we
Yeah.
really appreciate everyone always taking time to give their feedback because it's really important, for us to know, what parts of the program are working and what parts, need some improvement. And, it's based on that feedback that we can act and, make the experience a lot better for you guys. And, the feedback has also been great, subsequently because, a lot of people found that the office hours and other meeting opportunities that we set up in the wake of the feedback that we had gotten initially and help them progress and get more familiar with the task and things that they were required to do. So that's great. Yeah, and I think at this point we probably have a little over a week left in the project phase. So congratulations, everyone. Really look forward to getting as much of you as possible into the last and final phase, which is the internship. And it's been an amazing journey. That we started just in March, and it seemed like 7 long months, but
Mhm.
we're finally coming close to the end of it, and I'm really excited to see what this amazing group of people go on to do. So it's been a really great experience for me personally, and I imagine for most of you as well.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with that too. And I've been, I think what people get out, they, we some of our wrinkles have been showing it as a new program. We haven't had everything buttoned up and trying to figure out what works for people, or and I think we've caused some people some additional challenges they wouldn't necessarily have had we been a little bit more you know certain about like how we would run things. But so we're trying, and I think you're right, Joanne, that survey helped us a lot in adapting to make things run smoother and give people the support that they need. So, but I mainly just congratulations to everyone for like sticking through things. And it is very impressive, like the amount of work that people have been doing, and hopefully learning a lot of stuff. So and some of it's in the practical realm of like working with teams now, and it's harder than working by yourself, and but I think it's part of the growth process of learning how to work together. So one thing I would like, I think we're going to try to do, we haven't nailed this down yet, but I think we're going to try to do demo days for people's projects too. So look forward for communication from us about that. We'd love to kind of have people show off what they've done, talk about the challenges they faced, and kind of learn from each other, and we'd like to kind of celebrate the things that the people have been able to accomplish. So we'll be doing that, and then getting ready for phase 3 the week after that, and kind of getting people into teams that can work on these virtual internships. So okay, I think that's all. Anything else about the program itself, Juan?
No, I think that's everything for now.
Okay.
Yeah, I would also say like there'll be some more communication just in general regarding what to expect in phase 3. So I think sometimes next week they'll be getting more information on that.
Yeah, great. All right, well, thank you. So today I would like to introduce Andrew Kwatinetz and Eric Patey. Patey, am I pronouncing that right, Eric?
You got it. Yep.
Okay, and they are both from Sonos, which is kind of an innovative home audio company. I don't know, maybe that's how you would say it, but Andy and I go way back to some of the early days at Microsoft together. He was program manager when I was a developer in the Excel team, and so we've known each other a long time, and he's also known our other co-founder of Reskill Americans, Femi. He worked with him, and Andy, you're also a financial supporter of Reskill Americans as an individual contributor. I hope that wasn't an anonymous gift, but I want to thank you and recognize you for helping us out. In these early days, we definitely could use the help with like that. So anyway, I don't know if you want Andy or Eric, and you want to start us off. I think, how about a little bit of background about what Sonos is all about, and then we'll get into your kind of past careers and things like that.
Eric, you want me to start off with that?
Yeah. You're, of the two of us, you're the talker. So.
Yeah, we got someone in engineering and someone in product management. So I guess I'm closer to sales. So I'll give the pitch. I have some good props here, just randomly in my office.
Oh, awesome! That's great.
So both of us have been at Sonos just under 2 years, but Sonos was founded in 2002. And I happen to have been a customer of the very first Sonos device, which is right here.
Oh.
And I bought this. In 2002, just to put things in perspective, the iPhone hadn't been introduced yet. There was no such thing as Spotify or Pandora or streaming services. So before that, people basically played CDs or records. And I had speakers throughout my home, wired to a stereo, and I wanted to be able to play music stored on my computer. So this box allowed me to do that. But the amazing thing about what Sonos did is there's two things that were, made me a lover of the company and a happy customer. One was, this was one of the first smart devices where you just plugged it into your network. And the setup, you ran a setup program on your computer, and it said, "Oh, I see you've got that Sonos box." And it just had this wonderful end-to-end. It was the first time I'd ever set something up where I didn't have to type in codes or, weird IP.
Yeah, or plug into the USB port of the device, or,
exactly.
The rigmarole that people have made us go through.
Stuck in the Ethernet cable, and everything else just kind of worked. It was up and running in no time. And then it's, aside from being an audio component that plugged into my stereo, it was a little computer, and the amazing thing was I just retired this device last year. So I think,
oh my gosh, wow,
for like 16, 17 years, basically sending music to my computer. But I used Rhapsody, and then I used there was a Google service, and then we had Pandora, and now I'm a Spotify user. And the software in this thing has been updating all that time. So when people think of Sonos, they think mostly of a hardware company. And we make I actually have some other speakers that I use in my office. We make this beautiful speaker that sounds amazing called the Move, and it's portable. And then we just came out with this thing called the Roam, which is tiny, but also sounds amazing. So we make speakers, and we make home theater components, and a lot of people just think of them as a speaker, but really, and they think about the hardware, and the hardware sounds amazing. And we have some amazing audio engineers associated with the company. Those are many of my favorite company meetings, is when our sound advisory board, which is led by a guy named Giles Martin, who's won multiple Grammy Awards, and there's other people who've won Oscar awards. So the people who actually make the music and the movies we listen to are the ones who actually tune the speakers and listen to it. And so it's really inspirational. But below all of that, there's the software layer, software that lives on the devices, software that lives on your phone, on your computers, in the cloud. And so it is one of the most interesting things about the company is how many different types of software we write to try to create that magical experience that allows these speakers to just work.
Yeah, and I think that really differentiates your company, doesn't it? Like you would say, the software behind Sonos is the big differentiator, from other audio or speaker manufacturers and things like that.
Yeah, I would say that.
I would say that.
What's amazing is that this original hardware product, it really was all about the software. It was just a box to deliver the software. But with these new speakers, I mean, we've got engineers who just, I mean, every detail about the materials, the assembly,
design, yeah,
the speaker choices, what the sound is like. So I think we really have become a company focused on both hardware excellence and software excellence.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And there's always that tension. I think one of the things we struggle with as a company is that, you know, the hardware product management and engineering is typically, you get a team of people, you design and build this speaker, and then it goes off to manufacturing, and you leave a few people back to fix any problems and things like that, but then they pretty much go on to something new. But the thing about software is, you know, the same software that now powers this device is the, you know, on all of the devices, and we continually update it. And so software is, you know, behind the scenes, I think, I mean, it's a different kind of problem, but it's a pretty big challenge for us, how to keep that software running, how to keep old devices running.
Yeah.
We just went through our first life cycle event in the history of the company. The first time when we finally said we wouldn't be doing all of the software updates on this 17-year-old box.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you just think about it. I mean, would you expect the iPhone 1 to still
yeah, I know that can sometimes be a little controversial, like whether you know, and a manufacturer can in a sense kind of brick a device by ceasing support. And you know, I know that happens a lot. That happens, and people get upset about it.
Oh, for sure. And as a company, we tried really hard to avoid that. But, you know, at some point, you know, the amount of memory and the compute power on this device is so old that you know, it's hard to make advancements in the new hardware and still keep the old things running. But that's those are the kind of, those are big challenges.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's amazing how often, you know, since we're talking to people studying engineering, it's amazing how often, you know, when we work on things, you don't necessarily think, oh, if someone's using Excel, you know, 15 years from now, you know, or what happens when it's, you know, after the, you know, when it's in the 1980s, you're not necessarily thinking, what happens when it's after the year 2000? That was like one of the famous problems. But designing for products that really will last 20 years is a challenge. But
and the interesting thing I'd add to that, Andrew, is we're in this world of high fidelity music equipment. So people think of it as a device, a speaker you buy, and I still have my dad's speakers from the 1960s. They work just fine. So there's that sort of mindset that this stuff is it's not smart, it's just a piece of hardware. And so there's that challenge of helping our customers, on one hand, perceive the ever-growing capability of the system, but also to keep it magical. So you plug it in and it just works. And so it's kind of a tough walk for us.
It is a fun, I mean, that, you know, that's, I think, part of what both brought me and Eric to Sonos is that, you know, I mean, I'm not a musician, but I love listening to music, and, you know, and I'm a movie lover. And so, you know, working at a company that makes products that I use and my family uses.
You've written some movie scripts too, haven't you?
I have. That was my one break from software.
Not to out your hobby or whatever, your maybe side career.
And I worked on A&E Hoarders. Was the writer for a few episodes of that. So that's my writing claim to fame.
Awesome.
I would go back just really briefly to the hardware. Andrew mentioned how the team will ship it and then largely move on. One of the projects that Andrew and I are working on now, we're trying to help the company see the differences, not only with the engineering, but culturally around hardware projects and software projects. Culturally different in that, in my history, in recent years, software has been much more agile. You try something, you're not sure you got it right, you put it in front of customers and find out. You can't really do that with hardware. So it's really a fundamentally different mindset, and working to bridge those different engineering processes and cultures has been a fun challenge for us as well.
Well, that's interesting. So, well, why don't we maybe you can each take a few minutes to just say describe your journey into the world of getting started with software development or in our industry.
Sure, I'll dive in. I'm quite gray, so I started back in that same era. I'm in the Boston area, and I've spent my whole career kind of alternating between small startups and then bigger companies like Microsoft and way back in the day, Lotus and IBM. Until I came to Sonos, my whole arc had been in the space of communication and collaboration software.
Okay.
So way back in the day, I worked on Lotus Notes, which was the first groupware communication software. And this was back at that time, we thought of this as, this was just when PCs were starting to get connected on networks. Before that, there was dial-up, but really they were beginning to get connected. And so what Lotus Notes did, it allowed companies to build software for the way information workers worked within their organization without involving sort of the higher overhead IT organization. Historically, you would fund an IT organization to go build something for you, and then a year and a half later, you'd get the. Anyway, that was Lotus Notes. That ended up getting bought ultimately by IBM. I did that for a while. I then went to another startup around the time just before Napster became a thing, and we took that same concept of collaboration software with the Napster concept of peer-to-peer. How do you do collaboration software in a world where you may not even have infrastructure, server infrastructure, or a shared server infrastructure? This was a startup. This ultimately got bought by Microsoft, and that's where I met some of your friends from Microsoft, Antoine and Stephen. Let's see, that was one fascinating thing about that, the pure peer-to-peer collaboration software again. So think about doing collaboration without a server. One of the markets that we had a little bit of penetration in were peacekeepers, people trying to negotiate peace terms across different political boundaries.
Oh, that's
where
interesting.
In that case, not only did they not have a shared, let's say, server infrastructure, they wouldn't necessarily trust the other person. So that was interesting. So that was called Groove. Did that for a bunch of years, got bought by the Office team, shipped a couple versions of Office, did some time on the Xbox team, did some concept development for Xbox, went off and did another startup, left Microsoft, did another startup called Taco, which was collaboration, this time not peer-to-peer, but basically mobile-based. So we took a big bet on WebRTC, and we were, so we did basically voice communication using IP VoIP, and we did this interesting thing that blended sort of real-time communication like we're doing right now, or like a phone call, with sort of the asynchronous messaging. I send you a text or I send you a voice message. And we kind of had a novel way to sort of blend those two, so that if invariably you weren't able to make the stand-up that day, you could replay the stand-up, hear the messages. There might have been some assignments given to you during that stand-up, and you could add your contribution to the stand-up 3 hours later, and then others could consume it. That was fun. That we then got, that startup was purchased by the consumer Skype organization in Microsoft. So I did a second tour of duty at Microsoft. Skype was super fascinating because it was a recent acquisition of Microsoft's, and Microsoft was struggling to remain agile. Skype was in several different countries. The engineering teams were in several different countries, and the way the product was built, it ran on 8 or 9 different platforms, and it was built from 6 or 7 different source bases, and it just got to the point of not being able to innovate.
It sounds like you've done a lot of like startups and then acquisitions. And what was your real like kind of entry point? Like what's your educational background?
Yeah.
And how did you kind of learn to do what things you do?
Sure. So I was an electrical engineer and a computer systems engineer, so more on the hardware side. But boy, was I turned on by software. You could just do so much more. It was so much faster. And your creativity was not bounded at all. So even though I was hardware trained, I just loved software. And at the time, this was right around the time Windows 1 was coming out. And so I was looking around for any opportunity to do GUI development. And I ended up getting an internship with the company Lotus Development Corp. They're the company that did 123, and they because they were one of the only companies around doing Windows development. So I did an internship with them, and that got me started. And of course, being at a big company like Lotus, just the number of connections that were made was incredible.
So no CS degree, and
there was an computer engineering degree.
Oh, well, it's computer engineering. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah.
But hardware, right? It
Hardware
was all
side
about,
mostly, yeah. And
right.
so I guess over the years, like, you know, one of the things we do keep talking to our participants about is like the role of continuous learning in our career. And I imagine you've had to face a lot of relearning of technologies and things like that.
It's true. And you know, I'm constantly recruiting. And one of the things that I try to instill in the people doing interviews with me is to focus more on a candidate's interest and ability to learn and their sort of innate technical horsepower, as opposed to a very specific technology. Because as we all know, technologies have lifespans. They come and go. A language this year will be a different thing, you know, 2 years from now. And so for myself, I'm just constantly, I can't help myself from just keeping plugged into what's going on in the technical world.
And it sounds like your curiosity has been a big driver of your
that's
ability
fair,
to kind of
I mean, there's something wired in there that just makes me want to see how all this stuff works.
Well, Andrew, do you want to tell us your kind of beginning journey?
So I have a computer science degree from way back when, the dark ages as well. And it's interesting because I got into program management at Microsoft, which is really the same as what most people call product management. I didn't originally want to be a product manager. I wanted to come and do programming, but I was kind of pegged for, oh, this guy can communicate well, and you know, and one of the key things that where
I had the curse of being a good communicator,
I guess, but I really ended up loving the job, and then, you know, stuck with it. I mean, here I am doing the, you know, product management, you know, 30 something years later. But you know, we were talking about like what kind of advice to give and things like that, and you know, there's a bunch. But one of the big things I think serves everyone well is, you know, being an expert. And you know, the summer before I got my internship opportunity at Microsoft, I was interning at a consulting company that was as a side project doing how to do your taxes on a spreadsheet series of books and floppy disks that would come with it, so you could use. And they had a version of it for every spreadsheet on the market. So I basically helped them fix the spreadsheets. And so I was testing them, but then I was fixing them, and I was, you know, documenting. And in doing so, I basically had to learn every single spreadsheet on the market at the time, which was Lotus 123, VisiCalc, SuperCalc, Multiplan, which was the old Microsoft one. And so then when I applied to get for a summer job at Microsoft, I think the recruiters, like, eyes popped, because they were looking for an intern for Excel, which, you know, was a new spreadsheet that Microsoft was coming out with. And here I was, someone who actually was already an expert at spreadsheets. So that definitely serves you well in whatever you do. And that's part of the ongoing education too, is just, you know, I mean, every job I've had, and I'll give you an idea of the things I've worked on, but so much of it is just something that I really enjoy too, which is getting to know the competition, getting to know the technology. I think you know, so much of leadership comes from actually getting into the details. But yeah, so I started, you know, that was my first real big job, was that internship at Microsoft, where I got to work with Mike. He was full-time, and it was scary. I was an intern. But I guess the second tip I would give is, you know, or I guess second and third tips is, you know, don't be afraid to ask questions. I mean, so many of the best people I've hired over the years will come in, and there's kind of this culture in software organizations where everyone likes to act smart, and no one wants to be the one in the room who says, what the hell are you talking about? And Sonos is like this too. Microsoft was as well, where people love to use acronyms for everything,
Oh, yeah.
or code names.
Yeah.
And I sometimes I'll be in a room and someone will say like code name, acronym, code name, and everyone will just be nodding their heads. And then I'll ask, what are you talking about? And everyone else will go, yeah, what are you talking about? And I do think I really respect
that's that imposter syndrome thing popping up there, isn't it?
Exactly. So definitely ask questions, and definitely, focus on customers really helps. I mean, I think those things have served me well over my career. So I got to work on the first version of Excel for Windows with Mike. I was an intern, and then I kept working even when I went back to school to finish my computer science degree. I was still working part-time, helping to finish up that project, and it shipped while I was at school. And then I came back the next summer, because that was just after my second year of college. Came back the next summer, interned again, continued to work during school, and loved it so much. And that was a good time to get in Microsoft. It was fewer than 1,000 employees that first summer, and it was just growing so quickly. So then I joined that team full time. That first summer, there was just one program manager that I worked for, and maybe like 6 or 7 engineers. But by the time I joined full time, it had become a team. There was a team of program managers. Yeah. I think by then Mike was managing a team, like with leads and teams. Yeah. And so that was an exciting time to get in. It was almost like a startup. And most of those people who were the individual engineers, like Mike, and then the individual, program managers like me, went on to be like group managers and run projects. So it's a great opportunity to get into a company that's doing good work and grow with them. And that's how I learned a lot of the ropes of software, was being at Microsoft. I worked on Excel for multiple versions, and then I worked on Word. I got promoted to a management job, and at one point I was running product management for Word, and then I ended up running that for all of Office. So that was a great ride. I learned a ton there. By the time I had left Microsoft, I was working on the website quite a bit and doing a lot of things that now people refer to as lean startup, but this project preceded the writing of that book, and even the projects of that book.
Oh yeah, we worked pretty differently than what agile development and any of those kind of concepts. It was very kind of antithesis of the way we worked, I would say, it back.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we were very much what people called waterfall, where we would plan a project ahead 2 years. But before I left Microsoft, I got to work on some web projects where I fell in love with this idea of just build stuff and just iterate quickly and measure feedback. Specifically, I started a new project called the Template Gallery. I mean, the Microsoft website at the time was one of the top websites in the world. People would go to and would search for questions, and people were asking for how to do things in the Office products. They wanted, and we were in the world where we ship stuff on disks, and we were trying to cram more and more and more things onto a CD, or disks, and then onto a CD. So we were actually cutting things. And now all of a sudden the internet gave us this infinite hard drive where we could, instead of having just like 1 or 2 example spreadsheets, we could have thousands of example spreadsheets, a spreadsheet for everything you ever wanted to do. Why should you ever start from scratch? So the great part about that is we built it with only about we seeded it with like about 100 templates, but we built a system where we could measure what people were looking for and let people suggest additional things they'd like to find. So we were spending every week looking at search results, looking at what people were asking for, and then we would build new ones and add them. And we just kept doing that. And we found that the satisfaction numbers were going up, the number of downloads were going up. It was just a great experience.
I think, looking back on that time, I think I have a few neurons left that maybe have some memories of that period. But I think the feeling might have been, correct me if I'm wrong, that you had this like template gallery or whatever like that. You miss a deadline and you're kicked off the disc. Like it's like, oh no, like I didn't make the CD. My product won't see the light of day. Oh no. but then the serendipity of like, oh, well, we could put it on the web, and then didn't even know like that would be a, what sort of like experience that would be like, and I think now it's all flipped on its head. Like you would never want to distribute anything on a CD, and just think about all the benefits that accrue to like, shipping stuff, and updating them in real time and things like that. I don't think we had that concept, so much then. It's like a mind shift. People have to kind of shift their mindset about how things should work.
Yeah, I mean, one of the nice things about, Microsoft in retrospect was the company was willing to make bets. Actually, Bill Gates, when he was running the company, demanded that the company make bets. I've said this to a lot of people. I look back, and that first summer I started, I got to be an intern working on, the new spreadsheet that Microsoft was building for Windows. Nobody had Windows. Nobody used Windows. There was a version of Windows, but it was pre-Windows when, computers.
Yeah, you could play reversey.
Yeah, yeah. But most people had like green text, like Mike's background, on a black screen, and they had to type in a command line, and it was just, and most of Microsoft's profits came from DOS was the name of the operating system before Windows. Microsoft had DOS applications and DOS products, and made money on selling DOS, and that's where most of the profits were coming. But that first summer when I worked there were not a lot of people in the company working on the old technology. The majority of the company were working on the new technology, which is quite bold. I think most the history of technology companies is people trying to maintain their existing lead and kind of dipping a toe in the water in the future. But Microsoft was always big on we're betting on the future, and it paid off well. And most of the companies we competed with in the 1980s, no one today has even heard of. So the fact that Microsoft was actually able to navigate those transitions, and many of them were difficult, I think stems from that willingness to take bets, because it is hard. Yeah. I mean, technology changes so quickly. And there is the way I work today is completely different. The technology, but not just the technology, but the culture of, like Eric was pointing out as well, the culture of how we build products is completely different.
Yeah.
So ultimately, to me, I think I ended up leaving software to pursue writing after 17 years at Microsoft, and I left for 12 years, but then I came back to work at a startup. And I was worried that because I didn't actually know all the new technology, but I was surprised how the basics of focusing on the customer, asking questions, being an expert still really paid off. I mean, it was still, for better or for worse, in the 12 years I was gone, it wasn't like technology all of a sudden became easy for everybody. So this idea of trying to build better experiences for customers is still important. And a lot of the same things I learned, about building software with older technology, those same lessons were true with the newer technology. The kind of experiences people have, all those design principles are still pretty universal. So
yeah.
But yeah, then I worked at the startup for 3 years, doing it was all software as a service. It was what's called an iPaaS, an integration platform as a service. So we were basically, I actually compared it a lot. One of the things I loved about working on spreadsheets and working on Excel was like a spreadsheet is basically a way for non-programmers to program.
Yep, definitely.
And I think that's what an iPaaS was too. It enabled non-programmers to be able to say, when this happens, in Jira, do this thing in Slack and send this email and update this thing in Zendesk. And you could do it all by, basically using almost like formulas. So it was the same kind of empowering people to do things. And then we were purchased by Okta. So then I worked for Okta for a little while. And then I made the jump over to Sonos.
Yeah, I would say like, get one of the things you were touching on is like that transition to new technologies. Those happen. I don't anticipate that that's going to stop. I know it's always hard to it's always pretty easy to say like, oh, the world today is as it will always be, and it is very difficult to see those kind of shifts. And Microsoft hasn't navigated every one of those very smoothly. Microsoft's also had its share of misses and trying to protect the old at the expense of jumping to the new.
Absolutely.
Things like that. And big companies do that, and it's kind of the rational thing to do, all this money coming in from a source and you kind of holding on for dear life. But yeah, that's why I think startups are so interesting, because they do have that no baggage of the past, so they can kind of go do things that are really unique and innovative.
And that's why ultimately, to me, it all gets back to, I've always worked on products for, I guess, every product has a customer. Sometimes you might be working on something where engineers are your customer, or IT people are your customer, but, but this focus, there's always this challenge it is important not to just assume that what is best today is what's best for tomorrow, for sure. And I think that's constantly a challenge. And I think that's something we're struggling with at Sonos. Which is why, it's one of the things that, makes the job challenging and yet fun, which is trying not to get so attached to well, we're the best at this thing, or this is the way it is today, because technology always changes. The way people listen to, getting back to at Sonos, the way people put devices in their home today, I'm constantly challenging the team and the people I work with to say, okay, so it's in the past, listening to music was a dedicated activity, right? I'm going to go to my music system and tell my music system, this is what I want you to play.
Right. Yeah.
And it's easy to keep thinking that that's the model that will continue. When the reality is actually, it's not just music you want to play. These are speakers, and sound comes out of them.
Podcasts.
There's so many needs for sound, not just podcasts and music, but there's also the doorbell, or an intercom, or if it's in a business, there's announcements that come over the speakers, and you start thinking about what's happening with technology and smart home and smart businesses. If I'm in a business, I don't want to have to tell the audio system that I'm open from 8 to 6 in this store, start the music at 8 and stop it at 6, and then also have to tell the lights and the security system and the temperature and if I decide I'm going to open that store at 7 a.m., I want to change it in one place, and I want all the systems to know it. And I want, any audio to go to those speakers, or, I want to be able to manage, audio is just a piece of a much larger puzzle. And I think that's something we faced, we were there together at the time when Microsoft was facing that. There was this, way back in time, it was oh, I'm a spreadsheet user, or I'm a word processing user.
Oh yeah. That's
because
true.
the technology only allowed you to run one application at a time. But as soon as computers got more powerful, people wanted to use the products together, and they also expected them to work together. So there's all these trends where you have to always be saying, what is it going to be like tomorrow, not just how do people use it today.
Yeah. Well, I also think one of the things that just hiring new people, getting new blood into the company is that is one of the benefits, because the young people are generally seeing things before, us gray hairs are understanding new technology and understanding trends. And so on that topic, we did get a question from Aisha was asking about what are the qualities you're looking for in hiring? I know both you guys do hiring, and maybe Eric wants to take this one about.
Yeah,
what are
for
you
me,
looking for?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is a passion for the technology, right? It's that insatiable desire to learn and build things. And the way that has been exhibited to me by candidates over the years has changed dramatically. When I first started hiring, there was no open source, there was no GitHub, right? And I would try to talk to people about what sort of projects have you done on your own, and that was a way to learn about it. But nowadays, the opportunities are so vast to find a technology that turns you on. Go contribute to that in the open source world. You can learn from the community, you can make your contributions to the community. And when I see that level of excitement and activity, it's just so impactful for me.
Yeah, I'll add, I'll echo what was said earlier. And I like that I've always worked at companies that hire people based on potential, not based on, there's always this temptation to say, I want someone with 5 years. Actually, the old joke is, you pick a new technology and there's always jobs that say, I want 5 years of experience in that new technology, even though the technology is only 4 years old, right? Like,
yeah.
And I think a lot of the most innovative companies are willing to take risks on people who may not know exactly what you need now. Like, we don't necessarily need someone who's an audio expert, if they're going to come work on an audio component. But I totally share Eric's comment about that. I look for passion, and I also look for, like I said, that are you, is this person an expert on something that they've worked on? Like, do they work on something and they really embrace it and learn it and become an expert at it? Whether it's an expert on how customers use it, an expert on how it's built, all the different parts of it. Because
but you're saying it's not necessarily the thing you're hiring for, but just demonstrating some sort of level of deep dive expertise into something.
Yeah, I mean, the startup, when I joined that startup, it was already in progress. I knew nothing about that space. I hadn't used any of the competitors, but by the time I left, I felt like I was one of the world's foremost experts in that space. I knew the competitors, I knew our product inside and out, the problems with it, the quirks of it, things like that. And you don't learn that overnight. It's one of these things where after 2 or 3 years, you look back and go, oh, wow, actually, I really know a lot about that. And those are the types of people I like, people who ask questions, the people who are going to dig into things and just keep figuring things out and learning. So
yeah, and the participants in our program and other like boot camps, I think there's a new trend going on now where people who are coming from non-traditional, quote unquote, non-traditional sources of educational background, Microsoft, I remember doing lots of recruiting, and they still do at the Ivy League schools or the big tech company, big tech schools and things like that, and they're looking for the CS majors there. But I think there's also this trend of like, people don't have these traditional backgrounds all the time, and they can go through a boot camp or even be self-taught and learn a lot of technologies and pick up the skills you need to get that first job or an internship.
I mean, the good news is, first of all, there's a shortage of tech people. So like, our company has pretty aggressive hiring goals, and so does all the companies that we're competing with for candidates. So there are absolutely opportunities. And then like, if you have a Harvard degree in computer science, that does open doors for you. It opens the first door. But once you get in that door, at the startup I was at, we had a guy who was 18 when we hired him, never gone to college, and he was self-taught, and he was awesome. And he rose quickly and became a valuable contributor, because at the end of the day, it's like, if you can code and or do your skill well, I think our industry certainly has its challenges with diversity and inclusion, and that's why I support this organization, and I love. It's important for us to get more people in, but there is a lot of opportunity once you get in, I believe.
Andrew, let me try to close the loop on comments you and I have both made. You talk about becoming an expert. I talk about open source. We talk about, well, if you have that Harvard degree, that'll open the first door. In my world now, seeing you and your contributions in the open source world, that is also a way to open a door. So if you find an area of passion, and I see that you're one of the key contributors on that project, holy smokes, that's going to pique my interest, right? And so in a way, that's becoming an expert in a particular piece of technology. So that's a really good point, because there are these opportunities to join these other kind of communities and work with other people without formally being like part of an organization. Absolutely. Start off, ask questions in the issues, offer to fix a bug. Or even write documentation. I tell people, totally. Like, sometimes, people love people who will write some documentation for a project. That's right. Yep.
No, I think those are all really good points. We had another question about kind of more specifically about Elva was asking about your Soho studio space. It looked really cool. Maybe we can talk about some, maybe Sonos's and also like a career in audio technology and what kind of software. What does that look like? What's the software stack look like when you're working in the audio space? Obviously there's a lot of like, I'm projecting, I'm assuming there's a lot of like stuff I would be familiar with in terms of networking and servers and things like that. But maybe we can talk a little bit about like, what is the working environment like? You guys, I don't know, Andrew, are you kind of remote now, I guess, or maybe everybody's remote now?
Everybody's, we at Sonos, we have, well, the interesting thing about Sonos, like one of the things I did not like when I was working at Okta, and maybe this has changed, was they were very San Francisco based. And when they acquired us, we were part of the Bellevue office. And for the last, year and a half, because of quarantine, everyone's been remote. So this hasn't been an issue for anyone at any company. But it was, I pretty much felt like if you really wanted to be a leader at Okta, you really should be in that San Francisco office, because that's where all the decisions were being made. I was often on a Zoom meeting where I was, one or two of us were on Zoom, and there was like 20 something people in a room, and it was hard to follow the meeting, and that was tough. Sonos, one great thing that was attracted to me for Sonos was I missed the collaboration at the startup where we were all in one location. So I was wanting to get back to more of that team feel, but Sonos was founded as a distributed company. When they originally started the company, the founders were in Santa Barbara, California, but they had an opportunity to hire a bunch of really star software engineers who were in Boston. And so from the very beginning, they were spread out. So there's this culture of all of our teams always being distributed. So Eric and I, have been working together since the beginning on a new project, and he's in Boston and I'm in Seattle, and we just make it work. The team is kind of all over the place. The people working for me, I have one person working for me in Seattle. I have another in Boston. I have another who doesn't live anywhere near any of our offices. He's in Phoenix. So, and as a company, we've embraced that, and coming out of COVID, we will reopen our offices. And I'm looking forward to getting back into the office because I like interacting with people, but we absolutely will hire people from anywhere. And you'll never, if you work for Sonos and you're not near an office, you'll never be the only person in a group meeting who's on Zoom. We account for that. So that's been a great thing about the company. But
yeah, so I know that there's kind of two camps of there's those companies itching to get back into the office and wanting to go back to mandating everyone be there a certain number of days, and there are other companies like, whoa, maybe this pandemic has really opened our eyes to a new paradigm shift. And it sounds like
about the studios. I mean, we did have kind of the studio in New York City that maybe that was referring to the. We have a Soho in Seattle too.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
But
he's talking about the New York City one.
Yeah, that one actually interesting. During that store got broken into and looted during some of the protests, and then actually I'm pretty sure we've since closed that space as part. So we don't have that anymore, but we do have some. I mean, for like we have a sound, like one of those totally soundproof rooms. In Boston, and we have a lot of testing, audio testing facilities where we have speakers that are running at full volume 24 hours a day, and we're measuring things. And I mean, there are some jobs where it really helps being near one of the offices. But what's interesting to me is, like especially some of the mechanical jobs where you're designing and building, crafting prototype speakers. It's really hard to do that. But it's been amazing over quarantine when our offices were closed, how many people have like home workshops in their garage with all these tools and stuff. But it definitely, you can't expect that everyone has that. And that's where it really helps. Frequently you want to be testing things on like a whole group of speakers and different types of speakers. So the labs are great for that. We do have them distributed, but for all functions, we do have people all over the country and all over the world, really.
I may have
And
heard a
Eric, you
little
wanna
bit of
talk
a
about-
question. Well,
Go
I might
ahead.
have heard a little question about what sort of audio engineers are there.
Yeah.
There's certainly the
Yeah.
hardware-oriented people, and I'm not crazy familiar with those, but there's a whole team that is basically math geniuses who are doing digital signal processing. There's a feature in Sonos called True Play, where you can turn on the microphone on your phone. The speakers will make a series of very carefully crafted chirps. You walk around your room and we'll measure the signal response, and we'll basically equalize your speaker to sound perfect,
Oh,
whatever that
wow.
means. And so you
Actually,
can
our
imagine
newest speakers have their own microphones.
They do it
and do it
themselves.
automatically. Like this speaker will recognize when you're in a room versus when you're
Yeah.
outdoors. If the room is small,
Oh, wow.
our newest home theater speaker figures out how high your ceilings
right.
are, and
That's
if it's a
right.
flat ceiling, and so it's really amazing stuff.
So
It's kind
combining,
of like it's that magic that nobody knows what's happening. But
That's
for
right.
some reason the speaker sounds great, and you don't hear all the
You're
weird
exactly
echoes or side effects that you might expect in
That's right.
an ordinary room. That's amazing.
So these people are sort of at the junction of the sort of physical science of how sound waves bounce and interfere, but with the math of, so then how do we measure that and do something about it? So it's pretty cool.
So otherwise, what's the software stack that you deal with, Eric? Like what's
There's such a variety, right? So we have code that runs on the devices themselves, right? They are little smart computers. That's generally C++ running.
it's like embedded.
In embedded Linux, that's right. We have our applications. So those are in either iOS, so that would be in Swift and Objective-C, or on Android, it's in Java or Kotlin. Plus we have Windows and Mac applications. So those are in whatever the native language would be for those platforms. Plus we have probably well over 100 different cloud services to support some of the stuff in the background, whether it's the streaming services or the automatic updates, all of that sort of thing. And so those tend to be either in a Java environment or Node.js environment. We still have some C# Windows services, but primarily I would say they're split between Java and Node.js with JavaScript.
And someone else asked a new question here, just about analytics and understanding the customer, and asking about data science.
Yeah, we have a huge
what could you describe what your workforce is like there, and what?
Yeah, we have multiple teams. So there's a big investment in data, both the efficient collection and storage of the data, and a shared team that helps people like Andrew make inferences from that data. I don't know if you want to talk about some of that stuff that you look.
Yeah, we have a whole team of data scientists at Sonos. So yeah, yeah, I mean, it is. We have most people when they see one of our speakers don't realize just how complicated it is to make it. And in general in life, when something seems simple, it's actually harder to make something seem simple. And there's a lot in the background doing that. But yeah, we do collect a lot of data. We're committed to customer privacy, and so there's all those issues of making sure we're not collecting personal data, and we're being careful with our data. And security is a big issue, and networking is a big issue. And then when you're collecting so much data, like Eric was saying, storing it and being able to draw inferences from it is always a challenge. But yeah, we have that's a big area where we have a pretty decent sized team on that. There's I don't know what all the current job openings are, but in general, we know we have a lot of software investments over the next few years that are really important because we're transitioning to a lot of new technologies. So we're growing the software team, and I'm guessing that means growing all the supporting teams as well, not just the engineers and the product managers and the test folks, but that I'm assuming that also means more data scientists, more user experience designers, more researchers, things like that.
Just one more on the data front. In addition to making inferences about our existing customer base, kind of the idealized life cycle, I guess I'd say, of data is Andrew and I would get together thinking of a new feature, would make a hypothesis. We hypothesize that building this feature will impact whatever metric by whatever percent. we build the telemetry in so we can actually measure that. We build the feature, we then assess, we then look at it. Did it actually make that impact to that metric we were looking for, whether it's hours played or additional speakers purchased, that sort of thing. And then we'll assess, well, if it didn't, why was our hypothesis wrong? Did we measure the data improperly? Did we have some false assumptions? Did the feature not quite meet the need that we had hoped? And then iterate.
I should also add regarding data, Eric and I specifically are working on a project that's focused on speaker usage in businesses. And, we've focused so much on how data helps us make decisions. But when you think about business owners who might have systems at 20 different stores, data helps them too. So making, not only just using data for our own use, but how to package up data and enable customers to benefit from that. Or even things like the True Play was talking about, like if we're collecting data about the sound experience, that could help us design better features, but it could also maybe even help the system tailor itself based on that data. So the data, there's so many ways to use data for good things. That's absolutely a big area.
So I do have a question regarding design, because we do have designers in the program, and seeing that you guys are a consumer-facing product, design must play a very huge role in your decision making, because the customers are gonna care more about how it looks first before they go into like what the software does and the sound equalization and things like that. So maybe you could speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a really strong design team. Actually, one of the people that Eric and I work with really closely has been with Sonos, I think, for 15 years now, and he was, I think, the first UX designer who was hired. And it's been great working with him. He's got a small team of really talented folks. I love working with designers, and it's forefront at that process Eric was talking about. Frequently, we will test ideas out with customers. Actually, we have a customer advisory board that we've put together. So I spend a lot of my time actually interacting with customers of different types. We frequently, and we have a big user research team as well that supports this. But we will do mock-ups or prototypes for things where Eric's team hasn't even done any of the engineering work yet, where we'll put it in front of customers to get their initial responses. Design plays a key role for that. And then we iterate. So absolutely. I mean, I've always loved, we had some amazing, actually the Office team, way back when at Microsoft, some of the people we worked with helped pioneer a lot of the way we do design. And we were hiring a lot of people, with basically that whole, people used to think of design as being more of a graphic design thing, but this whole function of like user experience design has really taken off, and it's such a key role in the industry. In every job I've ever had, any successful product I've always worked in, there's always some key design people there in, not just at the beginning, but really every step of the way, there's opportunities for UX designers to play a key role.
And they keep us so honest with the relentless customer focus too, right? Like that's, they keep us grounded.
Yeah,
so much
stepping
better
into that usability lab. When we first built that at Microsoft, we built our usability lab, and I remember walking in there. I'd code up a feature, I'd have it ready to go. We'd put it in front of a customer, and they were like, "I have no idea what you're doing."
The most humbling experience any developer or PM could ever have, but most important as well.
It is really important. It's you can't just like write software in a vacuum and expect it to be well accepted. Yeah. It's hard. It's like it adds in a whole other layer of to what it is we're trying to do.
And usually, like something that a UX is like, when we talk about these different job functions, a team, the majority of people will be engineers either who are coding or testing the code. Those are the largest teams. The product management teams, usually you want to have like one product manager for every like 5 to 8 engineers, that kind of thing. And then for designers, you might even want to have like one designer for every 2 product managers. And so But the idea that, like when you put together like a concept, and in some ways you can think of some early prototypes as like a concept car. It allows you to test the concept before you commit to like 40 or 50 people actually coding to it. And once you start coding something, it's really hard to get people to take a completely different approach, or, often multiple teams have to work together. So there's this real power to having well thought out, well tested and validated concepts to enable the rest of the team to then go off and feel confident that they can now figure out how to build it because it's been validated. They're not going off in the wrong direction. So it's a huge cost of figuring out you did the wrong thing after you've already started all that work.
Yeah. Well, we've run out of time, and I want to respect everyone's time. And I wanted to especially thank you guys. Like I said, our participants are heading into their virtual internship phase here. And during this period, we're going to be spending an extra amount of time trying to hook them up with companies. So if you guys have, send me some information about your internship programs and things like that, and your hiring, what jobs you're hiring for, we will forward those on to people and try to make some connections. If we kind of know what you're looking for, we can try to help do some matchmaking with our group as well. But definitely appreciate the support you've given us, and also like just the really interesting stories about the work life and things like that.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, great.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Sign off. Okay. Have a great day. Okay, stream is over.